I'll just give you a brief overview before I actually start. Edgar Cayce was an American psychic, and he was totally researched, and everything he said and did was recorded. And this is why he became so good, because everything was noted down. I'm sure there are other good people, but they just didn't, nothing was recorded as much as his work was. And it led, here we are, it led to huge movement, worldwide movement, and it still is. Because everything, he did readings, or what you call readings nowadays, but he went into eventually a self-induced trance, and he could give the cause of an illness and how to get better and stuff like that. Well, that was the end of it. And then this whole people, like doctors and scientists, went into these readings with their topical subject, like arthritis, or I've got some here, schizophrenia, mental illness. They went into all of this work and researched out their topic and wrote books. And it's through the power of books that this has survived, because libraries have is a great source of Edgar Cayce books. And this is how it's survived, I think, just all the books that have been written about it. Anyway, to go back to the beginning, Edgar Cayce was born in 1877 to a farming family, south part of America. But his father, they grew tobacco. Can you correct me if anything doesn't sound right? Because Gary's been doing some reading up on it. It's not part of the Cayce knowledge that is much discussed or talked about. So it's been very interesting for me, actually, going through it. I quite enjoyed it. In fact, I'm going to continue afterwards. Get my specs on, I can see better. Anyway. Right. So he was born in 1877 to the people there. They grew tobacco. That was their thing. And his father was a bit unsettled as a person, and he tended to move around to different jobs, to different farming places. So he had a bit of an unsettled life in his childhood years, just moving around to different places. And anyway, he looked for a job, and he found that he was very good as a people person. He worked for a book company, didn't he? And when a person came in for a book, he would intuitively know what sort of book he could choose for them. But actually, I've forgotten one little bit. As a child who was very psychic, he wasn't happy with this at all. He could speak to the deceased. He could see colours around people. He could see nature spirits and things like that. And he really wasn't very happy with it, was he?
No. I think he saw, he was very close to his grandfather.
That's
he saw his grandfather drown. Grandfather was bringing the horse to the water, and it was ice, and the horse went through, and grandfather died. But he would often see his grandfather around the farm.
That's right.
He would talk to him, and he would let him look at his beard and things like that.
Mm. His father actually was also, well, I don't know if you have to be psychic to be a water diviner, but in those days, water diviners were much used for finding somewhere to dig a borehole for water for where people lived. You know, my great-grandfather was as well. I discovered not that long ago. I was very impressed. He worked for a quarry, and he used water divining methods to find water, also where the best place was to dig a quarry. But that ability is a little bit reduced now, because we just turn a tap on. But the water board teaches its engineers to do water divining or to use a pendulum. I've seen them do it. Anyway, to get back to Edgar Cayce, his grandfather was what they used to call a water witch, or a water diviner. And Edgar Cayce discovered that he could communicate with him and with other people, but Edgar Cayce loved reading the Bible. Maybe it was the only book he had, I don't know. But he loved reading the Bible, he loved the church, he became quite a firm member of the church. His parents weren't, but he himself was. And he called it the Christian church, but there was a Methodist church there as well. I'm sure that was also Christian. But anyway, so throughout his early life, he was naturally intuitive and psychic and loved the church. And he had problems going on, and coming to terms with it all, because he didn't feel as if he fitted in very well. So he had this problem about fitting in and being different to other people. And I think that might have come in.
He was noted to be able to, I think it was a spelling test or some sort of test he had to do. And he just, for some reason, he wasn't getting these words coming through. And there was something going on. And his father was trying to sort of say to him, look, this is how you pronounce it, this is how you do it. And he says, Father, just let me sleep on it for a little while, let me sleep on it. And he just lay on the book and knew everything in that book, and then became well recognised for being able to just sleep on a book and remember everything in that book. So it was quite a little talent he had.
Yes, he did. He could
Yeah.
sleep on a book and learn what was in the book.
So
I've heard other people can do that. Pardon? I know. So it was, yeah. So he was very different. Anyway, to cut a long story short, he had this childhood, and then he met his future wife, Gertrude Davis, I think it's called. Gertrude, yeah. And so he had to get a job, and he found that he was very good working for this bookstore, and he loved it, and but it wasn't paying enough, so he moved to Louisville, or Louisville, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Louisville. It's spelt Louisville, but yeah.
Yeah, it's Lewis spelt, but it's Louisville.
Yes. And he got a very good job there, actually. It was a very well-paid job. And he really thrived. Well, he enjoyed it very, very much. And it was in Louisville where he met this girl called Margaret, who they were very fond of each other. And she came from a well-off family, so she was able to introduce him to society that he wasn't used to before, and he really enjoyed himself. And he had this very good job at the bookstore, and he was also selling insurance for his father, so he really was making quite a lot of money then. And then he was suddenly struck with this losing his voice, you see.
I think it was a psychological paralysis of the larynx.
Yes. Anyway, it started out in March 1900. He'd be about 23 because he was born in 77. And he got a lot of migraine headaches and back pain. And it turned out to be appendicitis, but he went to have an appendicectomy. And while he was having it done, they discovered that he had a lesion from an accident that he had when he was a child to his testicle. I think it was pierced with something, and they did what they could at the time, and it seemed to get better, but obviously it hadn't got better properly, and this sort of internal bleeding often happens. It happens nowadays, actually. Not necessarily from the testicle, but first, if you can have a knock or a bang, and the bleeding can go internally. You don't see a bruise or any swelling or inflammation, and this internal bleeding can really cause a lot of problems. And it depends. The problem is nowadays people don't read X-rays very well, and it's not always picked up on X-rays. and it's getting worse. I don't know who's looking at the x-rays. It's certainly not always people that know what they're doing, but anyway, that's another subject. Anyway, so he had this appendicectomy and he had this other thing sorted out. They removed the lesion and the back pain and the migraine stopped. That sorted that out. And then he had a problem with his father, who was racist, and his father used to really go on about black people weren't a pure race, and this really upset Edgar because he'd had a lot to do with black people when he was growing up, working on this on the tobacco farm, and he became very friendly with a lot of them. In fact, the person that helped him with his testicle problem was a black lady, and so he had a lot of conflicts going on in his mind about not being happy with this psychic thing and being happy being a keen churchgoer, and then his father being racist and Edgar not being happy with that. So he had a lot of problems mentally with that, trying to get to terms with things like that. I'm going to try and, this is some of the notes I've been making in the last 2 days. Anyway, on April the 18th, 1900, so it's all happening around 1900, he went on a business trip to Elkton, and he went for the painkiller for this migraine, actually. This is before he had the surgery. And he was given some medicine by the doctor, and he took it back to the hotel where he was living. And then he was found wandering around the station. So somehow he was taken home, and he woke up in his parents' house, and he could only speak in a whisper. This is after, and he thought it would pass. Everybody thought, oh, it'll just go away, you know. Months passed and there was no improvement. So he thought his life was ruined. He thought, well, I can't work, I can't do anything. So his father's business failed without Edgar, because he was the one that was the prime person selling the insurance. But then he was offered a job at a photographer studio as an apprentice, and he was sent to Louisville to study it to train at the college for photography, and he became very good at it. But still, this voice problem he had, the whisper. So friends urged him to see Stanley Hart, the Laugh King. Now, are you all interested in hypnotherapy? Is that why you're here tonight? I thought there were. Some are, yeah, because this is where the subject comes in, you see. It's not normally talked about in the case a lot, but this did happen, I've discovered. Because I said to you I didn't think it had happened, but it did. So he went to this person called Stanley Hart, the Laugh King. He was like a travelling hypnotist, because they used to use hypnotism as an entertainment thing, a stage show. And so he went to see him. As a stage act, and this person put him into a trance where he finally could speak normally when he was in the trance state, but when he came back, the whisper came back, and this went on for quite a long time. You might want to say something about this, Gary.
Yeah, so Hart even tried to induce, when he was out with post-trance hypnosis technique, that once he was awake, that the voice would still remain, but unfortunately that didn't work. But because Hart toured a lot of cities at that time, he needed to go back on tour, so he couldn't continue with the treatment he had started, and that's when a local homeopath person who was very interested in hypnotherapy came involved. He was called Al Lane.
Yes, he was interested in quite a few therapies. He also, I think his main thing was osteopathy, wasn't it? but he did hypnosis and he did homeopathy as well. These people, this is the the early 1900s, and apparently this was the beginning of the alternative medicine movement. All these people looking for answers elsewhere, and Hart explained that Edgar could not go beyond the third stage of hypnosis, whatever that is. He couldn't go beyond it to get to a deeper level. And anyway, Hart said he would try again until he got it right. But he, as I say, as Gary said, he had to go away. Anyway, the story got into the local newspaper, and they agreed to pay a Hopkinsville throat specialist who would examine him before, after. Oh no, this was Hart. He was going to pay Hart, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But it didn't work again. He got his voice back during the trance, but when he came through to a normal level of consciousness, his voice went back to the whisper. And this went on for quite a long time, didn't it?
Yeah.
Do you want to come in then, Gary?
Yeah, it was, so eventually went to Alan Lane. So Alan Lane taught him how to introduce self-hypnosis, and he took him through that process. And what he said to Cayce was, he says, right, you diagnose and come up with a cure for your condition. And so Cayce obviously was taken into trance, and he diagnosed psychological paralysis of the voice box, and suggested that it is blood flow to that area. So Lane suggested, right, I want you to imagine blood rushing to that area. So his face came flushed, his chest area came flushed, and after about 20 minutes, Cayce said, right, the treatment's over. And so when he came through, his voice was still there. He did have several appearances of a relapse, but eventually through Lane and Cayce, he made a permanent fix. And it was Lane who taught Cayce how to introduce self-hypnosis.
Yeah.
Because Lane was a very he really admired, I can't say these names so you may know them, the Marquis Pugier, does that
Oh, I
make
don't
sense?
know that, Gary.
And a follower of Franz Mesmeyer. And these were two hypnotherapists that were, pardon the expression, anyway, that's the Geordie pronunciation. And they were very interested in taking people through and examining what the conditions were. And it was said that Mesmeyer was say that he was the modern era. That's when modern hypnosis came through his work. So Lane was quite enthralled by this, so he suggested to Cayce, why don't we do this for the general public? You go into self-hypnosis, and we'll try and speak to anybody that comes forward, diagnose their condition, and come up with a cure.
Yeah.
I think Cayce was, because of his Christian background, was a little bit uncertain about this.
Yes, he was very uncertain about it.
Yeah, so but he eventually agreed to do it if they didn't charge. So he started taking readings and he was doing a self-hypnosis, and he was sort of really being challenged by many people, but as the information came through, as the accuracy of it was, it took off, and more people were wanting to contact him, more and more people were writing to him, doctors and various other people contacting him. He was so accurate with what he was producing. And yet, when he was out of trance, he was illiterate in any medical terms.
Yes.
So he could actually go, and it was almost as though when he went into trance, he could go into a person and examine the body like an X-ray machine.
That's right.
And he could pinpoint any ailment or what the condition was, come up with a medical cure. I mean, he's noted to be saying that he was dealing with a gentleman who had a very badly broken leg, and the doctor was thinking of amputation, and Cayce wrote back and said, right, put a pin in it, put a nail in it, and that was the subsequent pinning we get today and pin the bones together. So it was through that reading that started that process. So his medical knowledge was immense. He confounded doctors and psychiatrists with his knowledge, but outside of the trance, he had an 8th grade education, basic education. So, and another thing, he never ever remembered anything he said in the trance. Never remembered anything.
No. I've actually got the words they used when he first went into the trance. They had to, his father was present, his mother was present, Lane was present, and that was all. And when Edgar started to speak, they realised they needed to write it down, so they rushed off in the kitchen and got a paper and pencil. And this is what they they've put together. So at the beginning, the results of the hypnosis were the same. He regained his voice during the trance, but afterwards it went away. So anyway, this Al Lane corresponded with Quackenboss, who was another hypnosis person, and he said, what we're going to do here. And he also noted that Edgar was willing to do what he was told under the trance. At a certain point, he noted that Edgar's unconscious self seemed to take over. So Lane noticed this, that his unconscious self took over after these many, many sessions of hypnosis. So this other person, Quackenboss, suggested that Lane should put him under and ask his subconscious self what should be done to restore his voice. Right? He was told to do this. His family were tired of the constant hypnosis sessions with no result. In fact, they were getting worn out with it, and Edgar was getting worn out with it. He was losing weight. His fiancée Gertrude was losing weight. She wouldn't leave the house. It was so bad for them. So anyway, they both lost weight and they were feeling really ill, felt weak, and they regretted agreeing to the hypnosis. Actually, they thought, well, it's not doing anything, and it's just making us ill. So Lane pleaded to have another chance, and Edgar was willing and urged his parents to give Lane another chance. So he did. So Edgar could hardly whisper, and carried a pencil and notepad. He just had to write things for people. He couldn't talk at all. It got that bad. Anyway, on the 31st of March 1901, Edgar put himself into trance, as he had learned to do from previous sessions that made his first suggestion as Ed was going in. Right, so Lane said, right, you are now asleep and we will be able to tell us what we want to know. You have before you the body of Edgar Cayce. Describe his condition and tell us what is wrong. This is the hypnotherapist saying to Edgar Cayce as he was in trance. And Edgar began to mumble, and he cleared his voice, and he said, yes, he said, we can see the body. And he said, in the normal physical state, this body is unable to speak due to partial paralysis of the inferior muscles of the vocal cords produced by nerve strain. This is a psychological condition producing a physical effect and may be removed by increasing the circulation to the affected parts by suggestion in this unconscious condition. This is the only thing which will do it. Suggestion to the body forces the circulation through it here. As the circulation passes along, it takes that away. This is the word. Puts new life to it, makes the supply to the nerve go, you see. They had an odd way, when Edgar really got into this talking thing, he had this sort of unusual way of putting his words out. Lane said, increase the circulation to the affected parts. And Edgar replied, the circulation is beginning to increase. This bit was finished tonight. It's increasing. And his father, Leslie, and mother, Carrie and Lane, could see the circulation increasing to the throat. And his father unbuttoned the shirt collar to loosen it. And after 20 minutes, he cleared his throat, as Edgar, and said, it's all right now. The condition is removed. The vocal cords are perfectly normal now. Make the suggestion that the circulation return to normal, and after that, the body awaken. So Leslie did as instructed, Lane did as instructed, and Edgar woke up and coughed, and a lot of blood came away into a hanky. And this is the first documented trance reading. Oh yes, but the cure was not complete. Approximately once a month, his voice became into a whisper. And so he had more work done, and the voice would say I think that's what happened anyway. Can you come in on that bit?
Yeah, I think, well, so that's where we get to the point where Cayce decides when he does any of these readings, he always has a hypnotherapist with him. And when he goes into a trance, when the hypnotherapist knew he was in his unconscious, when Cayce would say to start off, we have the body.
The person with him, whoever it was this Al Lane, the hypnotist at first, would say to Cayce about a person that was ill, and he would always say, we have the body, and he'd give the name of the person, and he would say, and this person is ill with whatever. And Edgar Cayce would reply when he was in this trance state. And there's loads and loads of records. And he would give instruction of how to get better. Now, as time went on, he went deeper. And this is when it becomes fascinating. And he gave the reasons for the illness, and quite sometimes it was from past lives, things that happened in past lives. And then a lot of philosophy came through, which Edgar wasn't happy with at all, being this sort of stalwart Sunday school teacher. But he did get used to it, didn't he? And there's loads and loads of books and stuff written about it, and it's always fascinating to read. Do you want to add any more?
Yeah, just how we get from these early years to the subject, so that's probably where Sandra comes into the different areas. But when so you always had a hypnotherapist with him, and when Lane couldn't do it anymore, his wife took over with the eldest son.
What, Lane's wife?
Cayce's wife.
Oh, Cayce's wife. Yeah. So we always had somebody with him to say, here is the body, we have this case, we have this illness. So he always had that person with him. It wasn't necessarily a hypnotist, because he could put himself into a trance, couldn't he?
Yeah.
But he had to work with somebody to give him the patient and the condition. Then he became able to do it at long distance, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, and he could remote read really, and the world.
Yeah. Right, anything else to say before I go into the present day stuff?
Yeah, well, he started off with 2 readings a day, 45 minutes each. And as I say, you would know he was in trance when he says, we have the body. And how he would do it, actually, he would just lie on the couch, and he had his tie, loosen his tie, loosen his shoelaces, and put his hands across his solar plexus, and he would self-hypnose. Just as a story, just as that, there's sort of like 2 periods where this starts off, but the first period is when he was helping people, but people knew that you would never remember a reading. So crafty people were slipping in things like who would win the derby. What is the stock market going to be like in a year's time? And obviously that sort of stuff was coming through. And at one point his father allowed it to happen. And Cayce fell out with his father. But Cayce used to get migraines and upset stomachs because the information coming through wasn't good information. What he had sort of made the contract for, what the contract was for help and healing people, not to make profit people. Although that occasionally happened, he often was asked by oil companies and things like that. His primary role was to help people, and when he didn't, his readings were quite fuzzy, because obviously there's like a distortion. The universal energies didn't really care for that. So that was at one point where he moved again, and he went back into photography, and he thought, right, I've had enough. I think it was, what happened was his youngest son was playing around in the garage, or gone to the garage, and sort of got hold of some flash powder, and that went off, and he looked as though he was going to lose his sight, and also his wife at that time had tuberculosis, and so he was asked to do more readings. So he did a reading for his son, and the cure and that actually brought the sight back, and it saved his life as well. So he knew he had a gift, and he had to use that gift for healing. So that's when he went back into the readings again, and the work, as Sandra said, he could go even deeper and deeper into what they call, I can never say the Ashton records.
Akashic.
Yeah.
Akashic, yes.
Akashic. And that's what he says he would access. He says there's no time or place or space. Everything's happening at once. Time is a convenient tool we use. And that's where he started really doing the real serious readings for masses of things.
Oh, he did loads. His first patient actually was Al Lane himself, the hypnotist. It says in the stuff in the books that this Al Lane suffered from malnutrition, and he was very underweight and everything, and he had digestive problems. So Al Lane was the first patient that Cayce did a reading for. And again, it said, we have, Al Lane must have said, right, can you help? And he gave the name and the condition. And Cayce always started, oh, we have the body, didn't he? Yeah. And he gave instruction. It's all written down, so you can go back to all of these things about what to do. And Alain got better. And then Edgar, this is how a new therapist should always start. I always say that you are your first patient, whatever subject it is you're doing. And then you gradually work on people around you, and then it builds up your confidence, and the word gets around. And so you just start like that. You start from yourself and you go outwards. And you learn from every client you see. However experienced you are, in whatever therapy you do, everyone you see, you learn something from. And something I've always said as well, and I laugh about this because people come back to me and say, yeah, that's true. Quite often you can be seeing a client and you're tired, you're hungry, and it's not convenient, and so you do it, and that's when you learn the most. For some strange reason, I don't know why it is. Do you agree with that? Some of the crystal students have said that, really. Anyway, to get back to Cayce, so everything was written down. This is the beauty of it, and numbered.